Hello, and welcome to our latest episode of Session Share, the Coaches Podcast. My name is Craig Birtsall, and I'm delighted to have David Baird. David has coached youth football for over 15 years and is a UEFA A licensed coach. He currently works as a educator and football development officer for the Scottish Football Association. Prior to this, David has spent time coaching in the United States of America, United Arab Emirates, and most recently with Heart of Midlothian Football Club, the academy in Scotland. He is the creator of Scoreboard Soccer, Method of Coaching, and has published a book by the same name. Welcome, David. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Craig. I'm doing great. Thanks. How's yourself?
Doing well. I'm really enjoying these podcasts, getting to meet some fantastic people and to bounce some ideas around. So let's get started. So first off, David, can you tell us a little bit about your background? What got you involved in football?
Well, I loved playing football as a kid. Like so many people do. Really enjoyed street football. And probably learned this on reflection, looking back. Loved playing football with my mates, but probably didn't enjoy organized football as much. Didn't know any better back then. But looking back now, I probably didn't get the full experience in regard to how like wonderful football training can be. How fun it can be, and how kind of games based it could have been. And yeah, I probably just started coaching quite young at like 16, 17, and the driver behind that was probably like giving kids a better experience than I had, trying to make it more fun and more games based, and probably learning more from in my opinion, the coaches I didn't really like when I was younger. I had loads of coaches that were big on running around the pitch, thinking fitness is everything, always playing two touch, when the reality is in street football I love to dribble and I love to take people on, and like didn't really get those opportunities. So yeah, that's when I started coaching, when I was like 16, 17, and just been doing it ever since, from kind of volunteer coaching back then with a couple of local grassroots clubs, and then did sports coaching at college and then university. And then, yeah, really lucky to get some opportunities. Like you said in your intro there, went and coached over in the United States where a lot of coaches do. And that was brilliant for enjoyment, but experience as well. Go over there where it can be tough to find roles in Scotland that are like this. But over there, I think I was coaching, three teams, two rec programs, summer camps, Easter camps. You're just constantly coaching, and I think that's just like probably the best way to actually refine your skills. I take that parallel from playing football. I'm just like a huge believer that, genuinely speaking, when you're of a certain age, playing the game is the best way to learn it. And I think the same for coaching. Going out there and coaching as much as you can is a great way to refine your skills and, obviously learn a bit along the way as well. But yeah, and then I moved back to Scotland, and I think it was 2017, moved back to Scotland. And as you said, I worked within the Heart of Midlothian Academy for a number of years. I work currently for the Scottish Football Association. Um, and yeah, just, love it.
That's excellent. It's interesting that you say that you weren't that into organized soccer, and you kind of said like some of the coaches, let's say, were probably not of the standard that you're used to nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, so, do you feel that when you were younger, it was because of the lack of freedom that you experienced? Is that kind of why you didn't really enjoy organized soccer or football?
Yeah. I think there was a lot of instruction, and didn't really have that freedom. Now, my coach education journey and my experience and learning from a lot of other people has taught me a lot along the way, because I do sometimes pull the comparison of when I was younger. My coaches were quite instruction based, and like they'll freeze and they'll say stop, stand still, and they'll coach us a thing or two, and that was probably the right approach back then, because in regards to my football and diet, I was playing football before school. I was playing football during school. I was playing football after school. At the weekends, football was my activity of choice. So I had a pretty strong foundation. Me and obviously my friends and my teammates had a pretty strong foundation of like loads of touches, loads of exposure to opposition direction, transition. You don't think about it at the time, but you're always playing like World Cup or Cuppy doubles or picking teams and playing games. Had a lot of that games based approach. So it probably made sense that on a Tuesday or Thursday night, this coach would now be like, okay, I'm going to teach you something now, and you're adding that to like this huge baseline of just playing the game that you have. It wasn't the most enjoyable, but looking back, it probably was good coaching. Um, and what I do quite a bit of time now is, again, just my opinion with some of the coaches I try and support and almost try and let them learn from my mistakes a little bit, is when children now maybe don't have that strong foundation of street football and loads of touches before, during, and after school, and going out in the back garden and football being their activity of choice because we know how desirable other alternatives are in regards to technology, then coming along on Tuesday or Thursday night and being over instructive and trying to coach something that they're maybe not ready for because they don't have that baseline, loads and loads of touches and loads of games, which, as I say, I think is really crucial, really important. So essentially, I think we just need to build a lot of that in to our organised football sessions because children maybe aren't doing it on the street as much.
I 100% agree. I feel that we have a tendency to just blame, say, our generation was better. Do you know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
kind of what it is like. My dad said it, my dad's dad said it, and so on. And I'll probably say it to my boys and everything like that. But we have to kind of evolve as coaches because, as you say, that like I remember reading a book with Johan Cruyff, and it said about how the fact that he would do organized practices 3 or 4 times a week, but he'd be playing every night in the street, just like you said, and everything like that. So he said, "Where do you think I actually learnt the game?" And it speaks volumes that that freedom session where he was able to take what a coach learnt him, add that to what he was doing out on the street, and that's when he was practicing it without that problem. But now, as coaches, we're looking to evolve now because children are playing less and less unorganized sports. So we're having to kind of interpretate that into our sessions now. So that's really interesting to hear, and that kind of leads me into my next question. With what do you feel your philosophy is?
in regards to coaching children, coaching football, or in
Yeah,
regards to what?
coaching in general. If you have a more broad for coaching children, and most of our coaches that we get on this podcast coach at academies or youth programs and stuff like that. So I kind of take your interpretation of the question, if you will.
Yeah, it's something. So if I maybe go into a certain program or a certain team or a certain coach education event, as it might be, I'll kind of mindfully sit and think, what are we trying to achieve here? What is the philosophy for this particular thing I'm trying to change? Because you need to bend, you need to shape that for who you're coaching. So, like, genuinely speaking, when I go in and work with younger children, if we're talking, 4, 5, 6, 7, like first experiences of football and sport, my philosophy is to develop a love for the game, and that involves like just making a love for the environment. They probably want to like the coach, so high fives and well done's, and asking them, what have they been up to? Did they see Messi's goal last night? And all that kind of stuff, and trying to develop a real love for the game, because as long as they keep coming back, then over the years we can develop them as players. So yeah, I think that would be my philosophy. And I think, like, as a coach, I've probably recognized maybe where my strengths are, and it's taken me quite a long time to get there. I'm probably never going to be a first team manager. Even the kind of like really in depth tactical analysis and opposition analysis, got a little bit of experience of that. But what I really enjoy and where my strengths are probably with those younger age groups. So from the ages of kind of like 5 to 12, my philosophy is probably all around developing a love for the game, developing the person and the player. You want to develop those off field skills as well. Like, football can be a great vehicle for developing communication, confidence, sportsmanship, teamwork, want all that kind of stuff. And I think if I can give children the right approach during those like really crucial ages, if they really lean into it and they're really motivated, hopefully what I've developed is a good little footballer who's a good little person who loves the game, so is maybe practicing at home. And I've probably, hopefully, given them all the tools that if academy football or professional football one day is where they want to move to, then I'm handing over a great individual that someone can maybe coach any tactical formation or any setup. I think it's really about that individual development at those younger age groups. But yeah, I think my philosophy is like kids that I coach, I'm really just hoping they'll stay involved in the game for as long as possible. That might go play a really good level, and fortunate enough, there's a few players that I have worked with. You mentioned my time at the Hearts Academy. James Wilson scored his first goal for Hearts last night. He was a kid that I coached for a number of years, and that's great to see that. That's really nice to see that. But children that maybe don't go and play at the top level, are they still playing amateur football? Are they still playing junior football? Are they going to get involved in coaching themselves or refereeing? I think my philosophy is around developing a love for the game, so they stay involved in it as long as possible.
I love that, and I especially love the bit at the end that you mentioned the fact that because obviously that's 0.01% that makes it into professional. We're obviously coaching a lot more that don't make it. So, did we develop a love for the game? Will they look back at those moments that they were coached by Craig or they were coached by David as fond memories of their childhood? And have we now encouraged them to bring their kids into the game and their kids into the game and so on? It kind of snowballs in. I absolutely love that. And what I also loved was the fact that you have a general coaching philosophy that's kind of like broken down per age group and per like zone. And I think that's fascinating, a great way for our coaches to listen and look at that, because obviously the needs for an 8-year-old is very different for needs for a 16-year-old.
I
So
kind of sorry to jump in, Craig, but I kind of break it down to, love the game, play the game, and then learn the game. And my experience has told me when I go into work with a group or I go in to take a new team, I can kind of see where they are on that trajectory. So, are they maybe really young or maybe not? I do a lot of work with the female footballers who maybe don't come into the game until they're 10, 11, or 12. So it's like, right, I need to make sure they love this because they're going to lean into it and they're going to develop more if they really, really enjoy it. But then the next one where I think some coaches fall down on, maybe because they've not had that mindful thought about the demise of a lot of street football, is that play the game next. So is this a group in front of me that just need to play loads and loads and loads of the game? Because what they'll learn through kind of just subconsciously playing is huge. And of course, you can drip feed in some feedback and some coaching points, some instruction. But you probably need to see them play the game before you can then pitch. What can they work out themselves? What can they problem solve? How far can they take them? And what are their actual gaps that you need to go in? But I think, and then you get to that learn the game. So to go in and work with a under 15s academy team, they all love football. You can tell they've played loads and loads of football because they've had coaches doing age and stage appropriate training from 8 to 12. And now I can come in and I can we can teach them the game now without any technical breakdowns, and they're probably a little bit more in tune to listen to you because they want to learn the game. They want to learn how to win the game this weekend or win the league. So, yeah, genuinely speaking, I think kind of try and pitch, where are the people on their journey, pitch it there. And if you have the time to do it, one of the most crucial things, and, I really advocate this to coaches, is get their voices and opinions as well. What they think they need to work on. What culture do they want to be part of? What philosophy do they respond to? And I use the example of fairly recently, a bit later in my playing days, I moved house and I went and I joined like a local amateur team, still trying to play at my age. And then the coach moved on and somebody knew I did a bit of coaching. So naturally said, David, would you do a bit of coaching on the team? So I had like an amateur team, guys mostly in their 30s. And I just did an exercise with them. I was like, okay, I want you to think tonight when you go home, 10 reasons why do you play football? Why are you still coming along on a Wednesday night to play football? And then I want you to try and narrow that list down to a top three. And then everybody takes me your three, you know? And then I designed a philosophy and a culture around that. The players told me that they wanted to get a bit of fitness. They wanted to keep playing football. Nobody said they wanted to come along and do rondos or passing drills. They said they wanted to play football and they wanted to get out of the house and away from their families for a couple hours a week, to socialise with like-minded people. So that steered my philosophy for that season that I coached that team. It shaped all of my discussions with them. It shaped all of my session plans. Nobody told me they wanted to win the league. Nobody told me they wanted to win games. Nobody told me that they wanted, the best players to play and they don't mind sitting on the bench as long as the team wins. They all told me they just want to keep playing football. So even at an adult team, and this blows a lot of coaches' minds, we had equal game time, to a certain extent, wasn't exact, but a lot of people think that's maybe a kid's, thing or a kid's philosophy. Whereas I had a load of guys that just still wanted to play the game and never told me their motivation was to win every game. So why wouldn't we take off our best striker and bring on someone who's just there for the social, the fitness, and the love of the game? And actually, because I kind of leaned into their motivations and the environment they want to be part of, the success then came. We did do pretty well and won the majority of our games. But if you don't ask the people you're coaching, so why are you here? Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? Because it's their game. The coach is there just to facilitate, what they want. To a certain extent, I know at different academy levels and first team roles, you maybe need to be a little bit more of a dictator in some areas of the game. But yeah, I think you need to meet people where they are on their journey, and you only know that by talking to them. And then there has to be a little bit of give and take and bending because everyone's different, and you need to find a bit of a middle ground. So I don't know if that will help any of your listeners at all, but I think those discussions are crucial.
I think that's excellent. I think that's a real good, fresh approach and a good way to look at it in order to give the players, and I won't just say kids because you mentioned an adults, give it the best that they want. So that's really good stuff. And we'll be back shortly after a brief message from Zencaster, where we're going to talk about one of David's passions, soccer board. Do you have a story to tell that the world needs to hear? Have you struggled with reaching new audiences who are engaged with your story? It might be time for you to start a podcast. Let me tell you about a platform we use here at Session Share. Zencaster makes it super easy to produce a high quality broadcast with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes ums, ahs, you knows, and 22 other speech patterns. Zencaster makes it super easy to produce a podcast that sounds great. Ready to tell your story? Check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencaster. Welcome back. We're going to focus on an area of David that is very passionate about. David, please tell us a little bit about soccer board and what benefits you can get from this program.
Yeah, no, it's scoreboard soccer. Yeah, so and like we were saying just before we started, I didn't have a fancy name or a logo or a website for this. Many years ago, I was just a volunteer coach running some summer camps and had a bit of a light bulb moment. I'm going to try this little thing, and the engagement went through the roof, and I think a lot of players really developed from using kind of scoreboard soccer games and that approach. So yeah, just to take you on that journey. And I've already touched on how big a fan I am on that kind of games based approach and loads and loads of small sided games to maximise touches, involvement, and learn through play. But for a lot of children, that's not going to work to the full extent. Maybe some of them haven't developed that love for the game, which we've spoke on. So actually saying, okay, we're going to play 4v4, just play. Some of them might become disengaged within that. I had the real world problems that so many coaches have of mixed ability levels. So David's dominating the ball, Craig's not getting a lot of touches, and sometimes depending on the children, the discipline can be an issue as well if you just try and play some football and then step back. So yeah, really organically, I was playing a game, had four kids in red and four kids in blue, and we were playing, and I had all those issues. So, for example, Craig was dominating the ball. He was dribbling by everybody and scoring, and nobody else could get the ball from him. Now, it blows my mind a little bit that some coaches would look at that and see that as a bad thing. That a kid can dribble by everybody and score. And unfortunately, the alternative sometimes, and no doubt I was guilty of this when I was a newer coach, is okay, Craig, you now need to use your weaker foot, or you have to play two touches, or you can't score, or you have to pass. And like really mindful of not bringing the kid down to the rest of the group, but trying to pull the group up. So, but it is tough as a coach. How do you praise that kid and keep encouraging them to develop their talents while bringing other kids along? So, as I say, I just put four red cones at the side of the field and four blue cones and a stack of footballs. I said, okay, we're going to play football, but if you score, you're going to come over to the side, you're going to put a ball on your team's cone. This is the scoreboard, and the first team to fill their cones wins and just play. And it was a clever way that when Craig dribbled by everybody and scored, I'm saying, Craig, brilliant goal, fantastic, keep giving me more of that, but come over and get that point. and the game continues as he comes over, so other people can get some touches of the ball. But when I put that kind of really simple intervention in, the engagement from everybody went up. The motivation for players to try and get on the ball and try and score really really increased. The discipline was no longer an issue because they're kids and they want to have fun and they can see the scoreboard. They're competitive by nature, because they're children and because they've subscribed to a soccer camp. So it just worked like really, really well. And then I've just been on a journey ever since with that really simple concept. Stepping into the kids and saying, okay, is goal scoring the only good thing we can do on the field? And of course, the children say no. You say, well, what else could we be doing out there? And they'll tell you we could hustle back, we could spread out, we could pass and move, we can try a skill from the training session and the game. And I just say, okay, we're just going to play. And if I see any of that, if I see anything I like, you might get sent to the scoreboard. So that's it in a nutshell. It's create an environment where, yes, they're playing the game, because I'm so big on this games based approach, but we have this extra layer of motivation. And when you say, oh, David, great communication, come to the scoreboard, you see all the other kids are now starting to communicate. They just they really want to be praised and they really want to be rewarded. And obviously, the journey I've been on for the last 8 years now is like designing other scoreboards, coming up with really, really fun games at the side. I've got different categories of scoreboards now. So I've got some that are just fun to develop that love for the game. I've got some that are technical. So come over and, juggle the ball or take a throw in to hit a cone or hit the crossbar. So you can get a little bit of coaching at the scoreboard while the rest, benefit from that games based approach. So yeah, it's something that I recommend the coaches giving a try. And obviously, I'm happy to network with anyone who needs a little bit more information.
Fantastic. I love that. I love the fact that one, you say it's a simplistic concept, but it's also an ingenious concept because even just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of ideas. The fact that you've pulled that one kid aside because he's got a score, he's put a ball on top of the cone. It's made him feel great.
Yeah,
It's now encouraged everyone on his team to want to do it too, to be just like him. While that kid's off the field with the scoreboard, the advanced player, if you will, like you said, it's now created like a 4 versus 3. So you're talking about overloads and underloads and stuff like that as well, right?
yeah. So I kind of take coaches on. So I deliver like workshops to different associations and different clubs and support their coaches. And I kind of take them on a journey of a series of workshops. So workshop one, we just look at individual development. That praising that behavior, so they repeat that behavior. They'll be motivated to build, good habits. And we dig a little bit deeper into praise and the difference between praise and affirmation. And there are a few things you need to be careful of in regards to how and when you praise children. But we really look at that individual development. So, for example, yeah, you're right. David could be at the scoreboard because he's a little bit more advanced. But what you could do is you could intentionally send his three teammates to the scoreboard at the same time. And now the advanced kid is 1v3, 1v4. So we're lining
Mm.
up, there's a lot of clever little things you can do. We're lining up the challenge with his individual ability because, lots of people want to develop the next Messi or Ronaldo, but we're not going to do that with 1v1 drills because I watched Messi last night and he took on six players with one dribble. So we really need to stretch the better players, or the ones that are just a little bit more advanced, for whatever reason at that time. So that's kind of workshop one. We talk about how we use it for that individual development. But then, just as you allude to there, Craig, workshop two is okay. Yes, we've taken Craig to the side. Maybe he's working on a beat the goalie and a bit of shooting. But what we've really done is we've changed the picture on the pitch. They're going to go from 4v4s to 4v3s to 3v2s to 1v4s. And then we dive a little bit deeper of, okay, what might your coaching points be if they need it? I mean, I find children learn quite a lot through just exposing them to those different pictures and need to problem solve and decision make. And it seems to get tidier with time, making better decisions. But yeah, there might be a time when you have to say, okay, freeze, you're 2v3 because David's at a scoreboard. We're all kind of diving in, and we can't go player for player because we don't have the numbers. What could we do? And that's when you get them talking about being narrow, being compact, and trying to delay the attack until David recovery runs back from the scoreboard. So yeah, I take clubs through a series of workshops. First one's player and person development because we don't want to just praise passing, dribbling, and shooting. We want to use this concept to develop resilience and sportsmanship and teamwork, communication. The second one is team, team and culture development. So it's about those overloads and underloads, but also about, if you're saying that the culture within your team is playing really quickly or pressing high or passing moving, then you can create a culture through these behaviors, particularly across the whole club. So a lot of the clubs I work with, you go into a changing room and they've got resilience and teamwork and values on the changing room. Okay, but how are you bringing these to life? They can't just be words. So this concept that I'm explaining, the scoreboard concept, it gives you away from the under sixes up to the senior teams, that you can all be praising and rewarding and talking about the values. They can really be brought to life through that praise and reward and these values. And then the final one we take them on is on like leadership. So it's quite a long journey. It's on autonomy and leadership, and it's around like the kids picking the teams, the kids creating the scoreboards, the kids recognizing good behaviors and praising each other by sending each other to the scoreboard. There's loads of weird and wonderful ways we do that around captains and leadership roles, and partnering up with someone on the other team and having the freedom to praise each other. So yeah, I know you said I was passionate about it, Craig. That was quite a long rant of me trying to fit like 8 years of development into a quick rant, but loads of things you can do with it. And any of your coaches listening, if their club wants to get involved, I can certainly take them on that journey.
Yeah, fantastic. That was actually my next question. I'm fascinated myself by listening to it. I've followed you for a few years on Twitter, but that's why I reached out to do this podcast, because it does intrigue me and I want to learn more about it. And I'm pretty sure our listeners will feel the same way. So one thing I know we'll do is in the description for the podcast as well, we'll leave more details that you can get involved and look at David's book. You can you talk about the like webinars and stuff like this that you're able to do, and workshops and so on.
Yeah,
So
which
I'll
the
definitely
the
put
web
that.
the webinars are really enjoyable, and as you know, I've got one tonight with a team down south. Because I learned so much. A big part of the concept is empowering the coaches. Go into a breakout room and design a scoreboard. What scoreboards can you think of a U10 high performing, well, maybe not U10, U15 high performing men's team, or a U8 team that are just want to develop love for the game, and then these coaches come up with these great ideas that I can then go and use at my same session. What can we think of as scoreboards? So
Win-win, right?
yeah, exactly. I would appreciate that, because the learning comes back in the room, and then we cross share different scoreboard ideas through a WhatsApp page and the website and all that different stuff. So yeah, anything you can do to network with coaches and clubs, be brilliant.
Love that. We'll be back after a short message. Do you need fresh ideas for your football, soccer training? Then follow Session Share on YouTube and X. Our handles can be found in the show description. Session Share, for coaches, by coaches. Welcome back, and we're talking David here. We just had a fantastic conversation about his concepts, and I'm really intrigued, David, to see what sort of advice have you been given in your career that could potentially help our listeners.
Yeah, that's a great question. There is something there's two key moments in my coaching career that have influenced so much of what I've done. And the first one involves a little bit of a name drop, but I'm sure you won't mind. So, when I first started coaching, you don't know what you don't know, right? So, my coaching was probably quite similar to the experience I had. A lot of instruction, a lot of like, I'm the coach, you need to listen, and football training's, serious and hard work and things like that. So I was going through my journey, my coaching badges, my studying at college and laterally university, and I had to get a part-time job, right, to fund my studies. And that coincided with Kevin Keegan opened up a training academy in Scotland called Soccer Circus. And so much of what I do is came from Kevin. He actually wrote the foreword for my scoreboard soccer book. And I remember going in for the interview thinking like this is something he's probably just put his name on, and he'll never be here. And then I sit down for my job interview, and he walks and sits at the other side of the table. So that was a pretty surreal, cool moment. But anyway, Kevin had this idea when he retired. He was going to open a place called Soccer Circus, which he described as a cross between football training and Disneyland. So some of your listeners might have seen it before. Unfortunately, it's not around anymore. But the kids would come in, they would get a kind of card to turn on all these games, and they would go around a circuit, and one of them was on dribbling, lights on the floor. One of them was on passing, there was lights on the wall they had to pass. How many can you knock out in 45 seconds? One of them was on shooting, which was like this kind of big bowling alley where the balls just kept coming out and you just kept smashing them, trying to knock the pins over. Like, so much fun. um and yeah, that's when I kind of started to realize, yeah, football training can be really good fun, and they lean into things a lot more when it's fun. And we had a kind of skills area where we used to do birthday parties and summer camps. Did a bit of coaching, and I was really lucky to see how Kevin coached kids. And it was eye opening. It was just so much fun. They were learning and developing the skills without even realizing it, because it was so enjoyable. So that's when I've probably first started to think around, and this is me getting to the advice bit, how powerful the environment can be. If the environment's right and you put kids in it, they're going to grow. Yeah, because they would go around, they'd get their scores, and then they'd play the games again. They'd be motivated to beat their scores. It was excellent. So yeah, that's when the penny really dropped around like fun, engagement. Being a bit silly and a bit fun with children. And then the second piece of advice I got really helped me, and it probably uh, affirms the first bit of advice. So, as I say, Kevin Keegan opened up his second soccer circus in Dubai, and he took me over with him to train up the coaches and open up the store there. So I did a bit of coaching there. I then coached in America for a number of years. I then, and you'll be wondering where I'm going with this, I then met my wife who lived in Edinburgh, in Scotland. So I'm not from Edinburgh, I'm from kind of West Coast. So anyway, essentially I had to move back to Scotland, and I went from coaching every day in America to volunteer coaching again, and I had to get a job. And my 9 to 5 job this time was in behaviour change, and it was in mindset, and it was around how do we create environments that people can start to help themselves. And I started to take that 9 to 5, like all the education I was getting and the day to day learning of how powerful environments are, into my volunteer coaching at night, and I think my coaching just went through the roof. I learned so much within that day job. A big part of that was how detrimental instruction can be at times, whether it's good instruction or bad instruction. Given telling people what to do just doesn't quite get that response that creating an environment and guiding them towards kind of self realization does. And I won't go too deep into it, but it was hugely beneficial. And that was consultations for people that they wanted to stop smoking, or they want to eat better, or they wanted to stop drinking. And it was like, if you just tell them what to do, you're going to get loads of justification for why they do it anyway, justifying their own behaviors. But I learned little hints and tips and did different courses around the environment you can create for people to help themselves, and some of the guided discovery that you can do. So yeah, they'd be the two key moments for me. And if I was to summarize, the first bullet point is making it really fun, and the second one is creating the right environment.
I love that. Great advice. Really do. And on a lighter note, just to finish the podcast, David, is can you tell us what your favorite moment is in sports? It could be as a player, a fan, a coach.
Well, my favorite moment in sports. Yeah, I'm really not sure. There's a couple that come to mind. I was at Hampden when Lee Griffiths scored those 2 free kicks, kind of back to back against England, and when the second free kick went in, I've never experienced anything as a fan like it. But that's probably not going to be at number one, because Harry Kane then scored really late in the game and made it a draw.
I enjoyed that one.
Um, James McFadden's goal against France in 2007 comes to mind. Okay, my favourite moment in football. Nothing's ever quick with me, Craig. Sorry, there's always a story. But
All good.
I am a huge Leo Messi fan. Within my lifetime, I've just never seen a player as good. I think he's unbelievable. Not just the way he plays, but the way he handles himself off the field as well. I think he's a role model to anyone involved in the game. Um, so I had a kind of bucket list to see him play live. So I travelled to Barcelona and the team line came out, and he was on the bench because they were playing a lesser team in the division, Leganés, and I was pretty heartbroken. You know, I still like Barcelona. I've seen some great players, but I'm in the stand thinking if Barca are 2 or 3 now up here, there's no way he's going to come on. The rest of them for the Champions League midweek or Real Madrid at the weekend, whatever it is. Um, but then they were struggling. They were really, really struggling. Uh, and then, yeah, watching him live was unbelievable because he just came out and started doing a couple of runs up and down. Nobody was watching the game. The whole Camp Nou went crazy when he came out to warm up. And then he jumped on the pitch, scored a brilliant goal, assisted another one, and they won 3-1. And it was pretty special. Almost better that you had that down and then that up. Yeah, that was a pretty special moment seeing someone that good live. That was a bucket list moment.
That's fantastic. And as a Villa fan, I'm famous with the saying that the downs make the highs higher. So yeah, so I totally agree with that. So
There's a
that's
there's a
awesome.
great book called The Power of Moments. I think it's from Dan Heath probably, and it's not really anything to do with coaching.
Mhm.
But you can take a lot of coaching from it because it's like, yeah, the power of moments, and actually to build these really memorable, enjoyable, lasting experiences. Sometimes you need to intentionally put in maybe a down and then build people up. It's really interesting. And actually, when you ask people, I've just gave an example of this. When you ask people what their best experience was, a lot of the time it starts with a negative. Oh, they got my order wrong at the restaurant, but then they took all the money off the drinks for us. Or the hotel was full, but then they put me in the honeymoon suite. It's exactly as you said there, Craig. The downs can make the highs. Check out that book, Power of Moments. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, David, for this conversation. It has been an absolute pleasure. As I mentioned earlier, we'll put the information in the podcast description, and I'll be sharing much on our Twitter page as well about David's book, courses he runs through United Soccer Coaches, the webinars, the workshops, and so on. So, again, thank you very much, David. Really appreciate it. This was an episode of Session Share, the Coaches Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us. Please be sure to join us on our socials and read the podcast description for all of David's information. This has been Session Share, the Coaches Podcast. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coaching the beautiful game.